the tunnel of time.
This time around, we're going up and down the broadcast trail to Naples, Florida.
Up and down the broadcast trail.
It's 1984, my second job in TV. Hired to be the weatherman and feature reporter at award-winning Palmer Cablevision's NEWSWATCH9. Anchored by none other than Susan Gardner. Directed by total pro Jim Goen. A little more than 40 years later, we too are still all kicking to tell the next backstory.
Up and down the broadcast trail.
How all three of our lives randomly intersected at one of the best cable TV facilities in the country at the time. But just like TV 51 in Reading, it too didn't last long. More twists of fate, fascinating co-workers, lots of laughs, experimentation, creative freedom, round-the-world exposure on CNN, innovation, the blunders, the transition to yet another TV station, WCIX-TV in Miami.
One story at a time.
And finally, how and why NEWSWATCH9 too was snuffed out. Sponsored in part by Data Appraisals of Florida, Motif Magazine, Rhode Island's premier arts magazine, your source for everything local, 24-Hour Burn, the only round-the-clock gym in Providence featuring the best imported equipment and self-access, the Providence Eye, non-profit independent journalism empowering the public, and the Refugee Dream Center of Providence, a community-supported nonprofit. Anchor and reporter Susan Gardner had been in her position 6 years already prior to my arrival. Director Jim Goen, 4 years. I had no idea what I was getting into, what turned out to be another fascinating stop up and down the broadcast trail.
Stay tuned. NEWSWATCH 9 is next on Cablevision Channel 9.
We're Palmer Cablevision. Get to know us. Get to know us, get to know us, get to know us. Get to know us, get to know us, get to know us. We'll turn your darkness into light. Get to know us, get to know us, get to know us. Palmer Cablevision, get to know us.
But we have Susan Gardner on the top left. Is that the name you still go by, Sue?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because it says
You didn't get married. RJ said he was talking to your husband the other day.
I know. I heard about that. And he said he sounded really young. And I've been calling him. He doesn't answer his phone now. He must know it's me.
yeah, Susan.
He must not know it's you.
Susan had this whole thing where she changed her phones, and so someone there in the store kept your number, Sue, and now they haven't. So when I woke up the next morning after you texted me saying this is my new number, I looked and it just said Susan Gardner, not 2025. Like I saved your new number. I called it back and some guy answered, and I'm like, hi, is Susan there? He goes, no, who's this? I said, well, it's an old friend of Susan's. I worked with her, and he goes, oh, I said, do you mind if I ask who are you? And he goes, I'm her husband. That's when I got worried because Sue, you didn't mention anything to me about any husband, and I thought maybe there was something nefarious going on.
Yeah. No, I'd love to meet him. He sounded like he had a pretty good sense of humor,
Yeah.
And not to be outdone, we have Jim Goen, who was a director at NEWSWATCH9 at Palmer Cablevision. You didn't just work for the newscast, did you, Jim?
No, I also was on the production side doing a lot of commercial production in those days for various clients around the Southwest Florida community, primarily Naples, I should say, since we were really only broadcasting to the Collier County area.
Sue, when did you get to Palmer Cablevision?
I got there in 1976.
What brought you there?
Well, it was kind of a strange thing, but I ended up here and I didn't have a job. And I was looking in the newspaper of all places. I saw this ad for a TV anchor news reporter. Now, how often do you see that in a newspaper? Okay. Right. So I applied, I prepared a newscast, went in for an audition tape, prepared my own stories, and did an on-air check, and they hired me on the spot. I think that was the only application.
they saw your talent immediately, Sue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Had you ever had aspirations for being a news reporter, a news anchor?
Well, that was my degree, was in broadcast journalism.
Okay.
I did the weather at the college station in Carbondale, Illinois.
What school did you go to?
SIU, Southern Illinois University.
When did you graduate then?
72.
So 72, no jobs in broadcasting after that?
Oh, there were tons of in small hick towns like Galesburg, Illinois, or, towns I never even heard of. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't want to start out there. I'm going to go to Chicago and start out in Chicago. And then, of course, they shot me down right away. I mean, I had no experience whatsoever. So I learned my lesson. Take whatever you get, when you first get out of college.
They weren't taking you in Chicago.
No.
Somehow you moved down to Naples, Florida. What brought you there?
My in-laws at the time were living here.
Had you thought of what Florida might be like?
It was a gradual migration. We moved to Atlanta first, and I did nurses training films for the CDC Foundation. Paid $25 an hour back then.
That's pretty big in the 70s.
Yeah. And this one training film I did, it was on depression. And the guy that was playing the patient, I saw he had done movies with Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy must be pretty good. I better be on top of my game here for this taping. And I show up and I'm talking to him. He's in a bed and I'm standing over him. And he's looking at me like I had three heads. And here it turns out he was a walk-on in all those movies with Burt Lancaster and Gregory Peck and all these people. He never had to speak and he didn't know any lines. So they had to make cue cards up for him and put him behind me so he can follow the script. We took us like 12 hours to do a 15-minute taping.
At $25 an hour.
That wasn't bad.
Yeah. So he was padding his resume.
Yes.
Did you learn anything from him regarding that?
I learned not to be impressed by somebody's resume.
Read between the lines.
Yeah.
No TV gigs after you had graduated from college, but then you moved down to Naples and there was an ad in the newspaper and you applied and got the job.
Right.
What did you think?
I'm very comfortable in front of a camera. I always have been.
For RJ and Joe, I'm Susan Gardner. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
I'm comfortable interviewing people, but it was a learning curve, because I had never done it, in school. I mean, we had to really learn on the job here.
Was it a regularly scheduled newscast?
Every night, 6:00, and they replayed it. Remember, Jim? Every hour on the hour. I think it went till 10 p.m. They played the same newscast.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then they stopped it after the 10 p.m. version?
Well, yeah, I think they closed the programming down after 10.
Yeah, they figured everybody was asleep in Naples at that time.
Or drunk and passed out. Yeah.
And what was that newscast called? And what was your role?
NEWSWATCH9.
It was NEWSWATCH9 the whole time?
Yeah. Naples was a town of 20,000 people back then. And we had to fill a half-hour newscast. Now, it's amazing that we managed to fill 30 minutes of news in Naples back in 1970, whatever. We were stretching for stories. And as you might attest to, because you were there. And I remember Bob Barber did a Duke the Dalmatian dog story, the fire dog that got run over by the fire truck when they were going to a fire call. Do you remember that one?
I got there in 83.
Okay. Well, anyway, we closed the newscast with Duke getting run over by the fire truck.
As a kicker, as a feature, like a ha-ha?
As a kicker.
Right? No pun intended.
Yeah, no, literally. And he was showing these old pictures of the dog. They were upside down. And I mean, it was kind of sad, really. At the end of the newscast, they're telling me to stretch. And I'm like, oh my God, well, how do you stretch with the dog getting run over by a truck? And I finally, I said to Bob, I said, so I guess everybody thinks pretty solemn at the fire station. And he goes, yeah, it's pretty bad. And I started laughing. I could not contain myself. I mean, literally, I was hysterics. I had tears running out of my eyes. And that was the dog story that took like 7 minutes to end.
So were you the anchor person or a reporter
Yes.
or both?
I was both.
Was there any other reporters?
Lynn Levine.
Dave, well, that was before Dave Bristow in the early days. He was a reporter. Sometimes we'd pull the radio people over. I think didn't Dave Fuller maybe do some stories?
Yeah.
Radio reporter. So before we go any further, Jim, when did you get there and what brought you there?
1980, with the intention of visiting some old college buddies and spending the winter in Naples and then maybe heading back up north. But I'd been kind of just bumming around the country, visiting friends and picking up odd jobs for the previous year. And I had been working out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, doing some construction on an adobe house up in the Sandia Mountains. And it started snowing, so the contractor shut down the project because we couldn't get up the road anymore to the house. So I said, well, let me see here. I can do this or that. And I found my buddies' names. I said, Naples, Florida. I said, I've never been there before. So I got in my car and drove to Naples and crashed on their couch for a little bit. Ironically, the apartment they were staying in was literally 3 blocks maybe from the Palmer Cable building. They were on 3rd Avenue South and close to 8th Street. Kind of similar to Sue. I think I saw an ad in the paper looking for camera operators. And I'd studied radio and TV in college and ended up with a journalism degree. I shifted over to journalism, but had some experience. So I just went in there, and it was just for a part-time job. And I was cooking lunches at the Witch's Brew restaurant up on the North Trail. And so I needed another part-time job to keep things going. And so I went in and interviewed with Connie Pettit, got hired, and started out running a camera in the studio. That was my first introduction to Palmer Cable. I started there part-time, and I'd cook lunches until 3 o'clock and then run down to Palmer. And we were doing Wall Street, Main Street at 4:30. And then we'd break that set down and get ready for news. And then we'd do the newscast and then spin the cameras around to the other side of the studio for our Page 2 talk show from 6:30 to 7. And we'd break down that set and set up for one of the myriad shows we did each night of the week. It was either a tennis instruction show, racket talk, or golf studio, or elegant Epicureans, garden exchange. We were doing a different show every night of the week from 7:30 to 8. That was really my introduction to TV, kind of like what Sue alluded to. It was really learning on the job because I probably learned more in my first 3 months at Palmer than I did in my 4 years at college with the hands-on experience we got. Thinking to myself, wow, for a little cable station, this place is really pumping out a lot of stuff. And so one of the guys there got fired for taking off because his girlfriend had overdosed. He ran out of the building. I was working part-time just playing commercials on some of the cable stations, and he was running Naples in the Glades and all the programming out of the main control room. He came running in one day, says, Jim, I got to leave. You got to take over in the control room. I said, well, I've never done that before. He says, oh, you'll figure it out. And he ran out the door. We had a security guy that would sit up front all night, Bernie. And as soon as David took off, Bernie got on the phone to Connie Pettit. And so she immediately calls me and goes, what's going on in there? I'm saying, I'm just trying to figure out how to get these shows on the air. She goes, what happened to David? I said, I don't know. He just took off. And so she says, you have him call me when he gets in. So he showed up about an hour and a half later. And I said, yeah, Connie wants you to call her. So he called Connie and he's like, hi, yeah, okay. And he hangs up and goes, see you later. I'm like, now where are you going? He says, I just got fired. You're in charge now. So when that happened, I got a full-time position at Palmer, and the rest was history there.
The proverbial baptism by fire.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great time there. I mean, as Sue can attest to, back in those days, a lot of cable systems basically had a camera pointed at a clock and a temperature gauge, and that was their local access. They would show, the time and weather on a remote station. And here we are pumping out, 20 hours of programming a week. We had people coming from all over the country wondering, how we're generating so much revenue with this tiny little cable system. But, I really attribute a lot of that to Connie Pettit and her vision of putting all that together. It was pretty amazing. It was way ahead of its time for cable.
We've got Naples covered.
Yeah, it was kind of revolutionary. For those who are not familiar with how this worked, Palmer Cablevision had all of Collier County wired. There was no competition, was there?
No.
Right, including Marco Island. And it was just when cable was coming out, they had access to as many channels as they wanted. And on Channel 9, they did this newscast thing. And then when I got there in the early 80s, they had put CNN headline news had just come out, as well as CNN regular news. That was on another channel, but on Channel 9, they put CNN headline news 23 hours a day. And we had a live half-hour local newscast that they replayed back at 10 o'clock.
The movie Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend, has opened to capacity crowds at area theaters. RJ went to see it last night and is here with his impressions.
Let's go for it. If you're looking for an action-packed family adventure that's a cross between King Kong and Raiders of the Lost Ark, this movie's for you. Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend is set in the jungles of primitive Africa, where competing archaeologists have reason to believe prehistoric animals are alive and well there.
Susan Loomis and her husband George want a major archaeological find before returning to America.
From what I understand, we gave the Naples-Fort Myers terrestrial TV stations that had a tower a run for their money in Collier County.
Oh, definitely.
Sue, what's your take
And
on
I
that?
think the fact that Palmer won like 10 awards for being the best cable operation for local programming in the country. And I think that says a lot for being such a small time operation and having a handful of people learning on the job, having fun doing it. You know, I mean, we did. And I made the best friends. We had so many laughs.
Look at the camera and Google your eyes.
Is that what you're doing?
Susan, you're having another baby, I understand.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. And who knows, it's one. Maybe there's,
You are,
judging from the size.
and you've only been pregnant 3 weeks now?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we wish you the best of luck.
I want to thank you, and I really thank you, and I want to thank all of you out there for just being just marvelous, simply marvelous.
You do look marvelous.
Marvelous.
There's a lot of people that were crazy that I loved, and Dick Brown is one of them.
Oh,
and
my
I
goodness.
miss him. You remember Dick?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Big guy, big booming voice, and all the old stories. I mean, he was one of those, the last of the great generation guys.
Yeah.
He was crazy. Yeah.
Well, I remember the night he shut the soda machine and it fell almost on top of him. Remember that? Trying to get a free drink. Oh my God, that was crazy.
Did you have a news director at NEWSWATCH9?
Yeah.
A number of them over the years?
I think we went through what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, I remember Ray McNally, I think maybe was the one when I got there. He was there for a while. Then he went to Chicago to go on radio. Yeah. And then it was Carl Loveday.
Well, there was someone before that, the guy who hired me, who wasn't there very long.
Oh, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they fired him.
Oh, he didn't last long.
Right after I got hired.
Yeah.
And you were said, you did this. I was like, Sue, jinx me, right out of the gate.
Well, he was a chauvinist, misogynistic, he hated women. And I remember I had gotten a call from one of the councilmen about them meeting outside of the Sunshine Law. And I told him that. And he said, we're going to run with that at the top of the news. And I'm like, I'm saying to myself, I don't think we should. He's an anonymous source. I can't identify him. And we ran with it. And of course, he was fired the next day. All the city council called Bill Ryan and Homer Dixon and said, you're getting rid of this guy. We don't want him in this town.
Yeah.
And it's true. And I didn't have to do anything. He did it to himself.
We were having some sort of 4th of July party or something down on the beach. He showed up with like a big old 175 of vodka and just started chugging that stuff. And nobody knew who this guy was. He's a brand new news director. And he got obliterated on the beach. He was just like outrageous and just grabbing people and yelling and screaming and running. And everybody's looking at each other like, who the hell did we just hire here? He started right out of the gate with a pretty bad impression on everybody, and it kind of went downhill from there.
Those who caught season 1, episode 1 of Up and Down the Broadcast Trail, it was at TV 51 WTVE in Reading. And it was owned by a gynecologist who always had a thing for broadcasting. Channel 51 in the Philadelphia market, but just in Berks County. And I had gotten that job by chance. I was working in radio, and then I heard about a guy who had worked at that TV station as an engineer. He bailed out of there to go be a radio DJ again because they missed 6 weeks of payroll. He told me, he says, I was in the process of getting fired from the radio station I worked at, but while we crossed paths, he told me this. He said, I heard, RJ, they're going to try a newscast one more time. I said, I'm putting on my suit. You're driving me out there and you could introduce me to everybody. And the same kind of thing. There wasn't even an ad in the paper, Sue, in like you had. I just went in and, being RJ, just squeezed my way into an audition. And they said, well, we don't have an opening for a weatherman. He says, let's do the audition. And I did my best Jim O'Brien impersonation, who was the #1 weatherman in Philadelphia, who had been a radio DJ too. And the news director liked me. And he says, keep your unemployment at the radio station, go down to the CETA office, Comprehensive Employment Training Act office, and sign up for migrant worker status to supplement my income on a federal program. And then they paid me 2 hours a day minimum wage because the station was broke. And I stayed there for a year and just, they weren't even buying tapes anymore. And I was just like dubbing off everything and watching it and how can I get better? Well, the writing was on the wall. They closed down the TV station. I went back to another radio station in Lancaster, and that's all covered in season 1, episode 1. I wanted my next job in TV. So there was an ad in Broadcasting and Cable magazine for a weatherman reporter at NEWSWATCH9, Palmer Cablevision in Naples, Florida. I had the guy's number on there. It was Jim Anderson. All right. So I overnighted my tape down there, and I'm calling him up every day. He goes, boy, you really want this job, don't you? I said, yeah. I said, did you like the tape? He goes, yeah. He says, don't take any other jobs. I think I can do something here. And lo and behold, he flew me down. I got down there. I got the gig. And then like the next day, he was fired. And I was like, it's like, boy, my broadcasting career is kind of sputtering here, I mean, what the hell is this? So he had left, and we didn't have a news director for a while then, did we, Sue? We were running the ship ourselves.
Yeah, and it ran fine.
It was great. It was great. Yeah. Who needs a news director? Just to screw things up,
Yeah.
Oh, man. They really upped the game with snappy graphics, and Sue was fun. I interacted with Sue great.
More on that in a moment. First, currents at 6 o'clock. We've got the rising barometer, 62% humidity, northwest winds at 9.
Who was your co-anchor at the time? And he left, didn't he? Dave Bristow?
Yeah.
What happened there?
I had a couple of them. There was Bob Barber, Dave Bristow, and I don't know who came after him. And then we can't forget Joe Klimas, the sports guy.
Oh, yes.
Miami Vice next year for all
Never can tell. The guy from Penn State wrote a book. He's an author. He's all this other stuff. And you never, who knows?
All right.
He maybe he'll come over here.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
Speaking of Joe, our buddy, I was going to wear this, but it wasn't going to show up on camera. But I've been cleaning out some old drawers and everything. I came across this T-shirt we did. It says, I clobbered Klimas. And then on the back, it's NEWSWATCH9. Some promo we did back when Joe Klimas was doing his picks on who was going to win football games. People would send in their picks, and if they beat him, they'd get this T-shirt. Joe is a character. I have to give him credit because he was always up for doing any sort of sports story, and we would end up going over to Miami, covering a Dolphins game, and we got press passes, and I'm standing on the sidelines with the Miami Dolphins the whole game.
Oh, Joe was a great guy. I could get high just having him breathe on me because he would spend the afternoons at the dock or the Riverwalk and drink all afternoon. There. So yeah, he was a terrific man. He really was. Just to interject, Jimmy was touching on all the people he got to interview, sports figures. A lot of big hitters came through Naples back in the day. And I don't think people, that weren't even aware that Naples existed. But I mean, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. I'm trying to think who else I interviewed, but there were a lot of people that came through here. And even though it was a Republican Midwest enclave, a lot has changed since then. The fact that you came in at a good time, you not only did weather, you also did feature stories, which were always very creative and always very funny. And that was our fill for the night. That was another 2 minutes we could fill out of 30 minutes, which worked out great.
It was a lot of fun.
This feature is our going away present to Flossie Jackson. She's leaving for Santa Fe, New Mexico, having worked 10 years as continuity director of Palmer's WCVU-FM and WNOG-AM.
Flossie's just a neat lady that I've known since the day I got here. If you bribe her with anything to do with food, she would do anything for you. I mean, you come in with a banana cream pie or anything to do with eats, she would produce a spot within a matter of seconds. I mean, 12-voice spot and food. That's Flossie.
Flossie was at Malin Moore's going away party. He was the program director of WCVU and WNOG.
Well, he was really one of the reasons why you moved to Southwest Florida.
Well, no, not exactly. I mean, I liked it down here without Malin, but I liked it better. I liked it better with him.
We worked together in Wichita.
Yeah, we worked
together.
Yeah. That's right, man.
You guys go way back.
What were some of the highlights of your career?
Today.
This is it.
And what are you looking forward to once you get to Santa Fe?
Oh, I'm going to write the All-American novel.
The life and times of Flossie?
No. No one would believe that.
People come and go in the broadcasting business. That's nothing new. We here at Newswatch 9 will miss Flossie and her wonderful personality and wish her the best on her trip west. R.J. Heim, Newswatch 9 at the Communications Center.
Like many other things in broadcasting, that part of it didn't last long. I didn't know there was a multi-year history before I got there. Amazingly, Sue and Jim. No. Sue, at what point did you start to notice that more people are watching this local news on Channel 9? Was it right away? Did it take years for it to develop?
When we started, everybody in Naples watched us because we were the only game in town. They didn't want to tune in to BBH to listen to Fort Myers news. They wanted to know what was going on in Naples. And if they did, they tuned into us because we covered the county, we covered the school board, we covered City Hall, we covered everything that was local that affected them. And that's what people cared about. They didn't care about Fort Myers or Cape Coral. I mean, Cape Coral was a trailer park, I think, at that time. But now it's like the #1 city in Florida in growth. They have like 1 million people there. But no, people in Naples care about Naples. They don't care about anything else.
I agree 100%, especially back in the 80s. Fort Myers and Naples might as well have been in two different countries because nobody in Naples cared about what was going on in Fort Myers and vice versa. And so to have a whole newscast dedicated just to Collier County was just ideal. It was a stroke of genius.
In my, year there with Newswatch 9, year and a half or so, I thought we were doing a great job. We were even getting with the engaging personality of Susan Gardner and Joe Klimas and yours truly.
Well, it was an absolutely gorgeous day today. Let's hope we have another one tomorrow, huh? You like that?
Susan, you're killing me. You're really,
I know.
We had some extra clouds around today, and it wasn't as nice as I thought it was going to be. But
all right.
All right, well, I'll try to get into this in just a moment. Stay with us.
I really thought it was hitting its stride, and I was kind of shocked when they killed it. What's your take on
that? That happened when Comcast bought us out.
Yeah.
Is that what was going on?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Comcast bought out Palmer Cablevision and killed everything local.
My last 6 months there, they were planning on putting a new building together down on 951 on the way to Marco, a new broadcast station and call center. And the service guys used to be out on Radio Road in the middle of nowhere. And they were going to put a big building down there and unify everything. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. Once they moved down there and they had a new studio and they tried to go bigger it just wasn't well planned. And like Sue said, once Comcast got a hold of it, they just went in with cost cutting measures and pretty much cut everything out.
Jim Anderson flew me down once, and then he gave me the job, and then I put my living in a U-Haul tow bar on the back of my car and drove down to start working down there. But I remember, I'll never forget when I was on the plane ride down there, and then I had to take a little puddle jumper into all the way to Naples, which scared the hell out of me. Someone sitting next to me on the plane, they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm coming down here. I got a job at NEWSWATCH9. I'm going to be the weatherman and reporter." The guy looked at me and he goes, "We don't want anybody else coming down here. You just keep Naples the quiet little enclave that it is." I was like, I didn't know what I was getting into.
Climax Springs. Now, God's honest truth, that's the day. Climax Spring. Great place to have a picnic. They had 1.5 inches of rain, and it's still raining right now. It's getting awful wet, though. Anyhow.
So I got there, I think it was early 84 to 85. It was around the time Carl Loveday came in, and I was watching. So we carried the independent stations from Miami. We couldn't carry the network affiliates because those were locked in by the Fort Myers stations. And I noticed I'd watched Channel 6 out of Miami. They were the independent station, Taft Broadcasting, and they had a 10 o'clock news. So I was watching that, and then it turned out the weekday weather guy was on the weekends. So I called up the newsroom there. I said, "Hey, do you need a weatherman?" They were like, "Yeah, we have the same guy working 7 nights a week." So I sent my tape, met the guy. He says, "All right, tell you what, you work for me every weekend for a full year, and I'll give you a full-time job." And I was in my 20s, and I trusted people, a handshake, right? So I figured I could make it work. It's just a 10 o'clock news. Saturday, I drive across the Alligator Alley, work to deal with the River Park Hotel after a couple of weekends to stay there, and they would give me even a suite if the room wasn't booked to, if I'd stay there for a year. So I was getting like $85 a night, and I'd stay every Saturday night. Well, I didn't tell Palmer that I took the job on the weekends in Miami.
Different Strokes, Monday at 7 on WCIX Channel 6.
Well, what happened to the sunshine?
It was hiding behind the clouds. Actually, 30 miles off coast, the skies were a clear blue, bright sunshine. I wore my controversial Miami Vice jacket here tonight, just to maybe shock the sun to come out.
No
tomorrow.
T-shirt?
No T-shirt.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's controversial. Let's go outside, take a look at the currents. Miami 83, Miami Beach 84, Fort Lauderdale and Key West both at 83. Humidity 72%, southeast winds are at 12, barometer rising, and surf temperatures 84. Skytrack's the weather machine, 10 o'clock outside. Look at this. Miami's right down here, out in the Bahamas, and people were out in boats just offshore from Miami. It was beautiful out there. All these clouds are moving slowly to the north, but heavy thunder showers are continuing for the Panhandle, and boy, is the rain coming down up there.
And so they kind of found out when they were like clicking across the channels and like, "What's our weatherman? He's out in Miami on the weekends." And they, they brought me in and like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, it's, Miami and this is Naples." And I didn't think I had to run it past anybody. Well, they got a little pissed off about that. 11 months into that deal, that guy got fired. The new guy comes in. He says, "Where's your contract in Miami?" I said, "Well, I don't have one." The guy said, he goes, "Get the fuck out of my office." So I was just part-time. And then it was around that time that they killed NEWSWATCH9. Now, we were at our stride, and I don't remember the rumblings yet that Comcast was buying us out. All my checks still said Palmer Cablevision on it. So I think that happened afterwards.
Yeah.
Why do you think they killed it because of something else?
Comcast had a monopoly in most areas of the country. They didn't want to have to deal with local programming. They were in to make big bucks. Local programming can cost stations some money. And I think it was a cost-saving measure on their part. They didn't want to participate. They wanted to hook into, any network they could and forget the local programming. And I think that was the bottom line, was money.
Because they replaced us with a one-man anchor show. What was that guy's name? Do you remember that? The news staff.
Scoville?
Yes.
Yeah, well, he didn't last long. Yeah, he didn't last long either.
in my mind, I was thinking it might have had something to do with that multi-part expose I did on 2500 Gordon Drive. Do you remember that, Sue?
Yeah.
You remember that, Jim?
Yeah, when they were
Yeah.
tearing that building, the house down.
Yeah.
2500 Gordon Drive, assessed value over $1 million. The house was built in 1937, demolished in 1985.
It has been a tough house to tear down. It was a well-built house. It was built back in the old days when they built houses the way they should build them today. It withstood hurricanes all the way back from 1936 to now, and with withstanding Hurricane Donna, it had to be pretty well constructed to withstand it.
Craig Stevenson was 4 years old when the house became his home.
Oh, it's kind of it's like an old friend. I don't know, it's real strange. After growing up here, I used to after we didn't live here anymore, I used to come back and drive through the driveway like tourists would do when we lived here, and we hated it, but we drove back through here and would show people, oh, this is where I used to live. So it's different. It's tough to deal with.
2500 Gordon Drive was sold to the Collier Corporation in 1983. Miles Collier, a descendant of the founders of Collier County and managing partner of the Collier Corporation, said through his spokesman Cliff Barksdale, quote, "The structure was uneconomically repairable and hazardous in its current condition. The Collier Corporation made the decision to demolish the structure."
So I had heard about it. I'm in my 20s. I'm wild like everyone else in their 20s was down then, having the time of my life and partying every night and meeting people. And I met this guy who was the caretaker of the estate of this house at 2500 Gordon Drive, which was one of the oldest homes in Naples on the Gulf of Mexico. And he told me about it, and he said, they're going to tear this thing down to build condos. And I was like, what?
What do you feel about them preparing to knock down the house?
Well, I feel that the place should be restored, that it should not be torn down, but I think it's a little late for that. It just looks like ruins right now. I can't say anything. Doesn't look anything the same. It's like a hurricane came through and tore it up.
Ironically, a house built to withstand the random destruction of a hurricane falls at the hands of a planned demolition.
I was a big fan of 60 Minutes, and I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity to do some long form pieces. At this point, Carl Loveday became our news director, which was a whole nother story. We could probably talk hours about that. But, I started investigating what was happening with that house. Got in there at night. The curator took me in. We tracked down some of the people who used to live in the house. I wove music together with it.
They salvaged what they could and hauled away the rest.
Are you sad to see it go?
Of course. I would hate for anybody to have to do the same thing I've had to do. Live here and have to move out someday.
Tears for Fears, everybody wants to rule the world. I mean, it was kind of innovative doing all of that together. But however, on the fourth night, it was a 5-part series, Monday, Tuesday. As I'm airing these things, then my phone started ringing in the newsroom. And it was a guy saying, you're doing all this about 2500 Gordon Drive. What about the Palmers? The Palmers did the same thing with a similar house down the road, tore it down to build condominiums on it. And I was like, well, being a journalist, you just can't tell one side of the story. So I looked into it and rewrote, I think it was episode 4 or episode 5, shot some more stand-ups with it.
This is the Palmer property, bounded on the north by 20th Avenue South, and on the south by a public walkway to the beach. A 9-lot subdivision plan has commenced on the 6.13-acre property. Palmer representatives said, quote, the subdivision plan was rezoned to create a more logical and aesthetically pleasing development.
I remember being called into Homer's office. Remember Homer? Was that
I loved Homer.
Yeah. He's like, what'd you do that story for? Because I said, not only did the Colliers of the Collier Corporation, the descendants of the founders of Collier County, tear down one of the most historic, oldest houses with cut coral, and you could never replace something like that. But the Palmers did it too. that had the name on the cable company. He goes, why'd you do that? I said, well, I didn't know about it until I started doing the story, and then I heard about it, and in fairness, I had to tell the rest of the story. And it was right around that time that they killed the newscast. And they weren't able to build anything in my visits since then for 10 years on that site.
Right.
There was even articles in the Naples Daily News then about, what I had uncovered in my 5-part series.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is pretty hot shit stuff, And then boom.
Part of the history I remember as well, too, is that the original guys, Bill Ryan, there was a guy, Jimmy Fredrickson, whose father was the engineer that helped build the cable system. A lot of those guys left in order to get into cell phone towers. And I couldn't believe it at the time. I'm like, why would they give up a lucrative cable system to get into something as stupid as building cell phone towers? Way ahead of the curve. And they all ended up being multimillionaires out of it. But I think that had part of it, some to do with it when the original guys like Bill Ryan left, and some of the original guys, I think Homer might have retired at that time. And then like Brad Estes kind of took it over, and he was kind of running things into the ground. I also remember that Palmer got sold to like Colony Cable, and then Colony Cable sold it to Continental Cable, and Continental Cable sold it to Comcast.
Yeah, that was the missing link because I wasn't there with the Comcast stuff.
I left Palmer, and right after that, they had finished building their new center down on 951. They built this big building. It had a big TV studio in it, and they had their call centers. And
yeah, I remember there were rumblings of that. Hey, we're new facility.
They built that. And I don't recall, but I think they were doing some newscasts out of there because they had a studio. It was pretty much a whole new crew. They had a newscast of sorts going on there, but I don't think it got the support that NEWSWATCH9 had gotten when we were with Palmer. It eventually just kind of went south, and they eventually just shut the whole thing down. But I think NEWSWATCH9 as an entity got put to bed by Brad Estes at one point after the original guys left. For whatever reason, I don't know. But I think he just thought it was costing too much money.
Do you think it was a mistake?
Oh, sure. I mean, I still think the local network news affiliates cover far more Lee County and even Charlotte County than they do Collier. A newscast devoted just to Collier could still be an ongoing thing.
Sue, did you think it was a mistake to kill NEWSWATCH9?
I think after we all left, it started to go downhill, and that was the eventual demise. It didn't have that core group of people to keep it going. They were hiring people that had no experience, didn't know what they were doing, and people just stopped watching. People don't, they didn't care. It wasn't what it used to be.
Yeah, and we gave them a good show, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We sure did.
Well, the new movie Moving Violation, starring Bill Murray's brother and Clara Peller, has opened at area theaters. RJ went to see it and is here with a preview.
Thank you, Susan. Now look, if you drive a car, you will identify with moving violations.
Oh, I'm so glad you're home, Emma. Come on. I know, but I came to take you home.
Let me drive. Sure is right. That's bad.
Just don't worry about it, okay? Just get in the car, honey.
White zone is for loading and unloading of passengers only. No parking. Flight 106, now departing at gate 7, immediate departure. Last call for flight 106.
Oh, well, dear, I'm glad to see you, too. Yes, thank you, dear. Oh, well, you've had your hair done. You look lovely.
Loretta! Jamie? Come sit on Grandpa's lap.
Ooh! I think I broke it. This is all I need.
That's all we need. There are quite a few belly laughs in Moving Violations, although it's not funny all the way through. But if you're looking for some classic comedy scenes, lighthearted entertainment, and some unbelievable fun, go see Moving Violations. It's rated PG-13, Susan, and is now playing at a theater near you.
Pick up some driving tips while you were there
Yes,
last
I did.
night. Good, good. All right, thanks, Arch. This has been Newswatch 9 for this evening. Stay tuned to this channel for local news and weather minutes 24 hours a day. For RJ and Joe, thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.
Not only Newswatch 9, but all the other programming we did. The Page 2 call-in show was very popular. I mean, the phones would light up every night.
Page 2, and RJ, you did it with me.
I
You
had to
sit
fill
there
in. Yes.
and you stare at a phone.
Thanks a lot for your.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Hi, you're on Viewpoint. Hello.
And then you click on the button.
Yeah, and the guest I had to do was Phyllis Schlafly.
Oh my God. I had that a China expert on, and I had just gotten back from China, and I had like a list of questions, and he would answer no, yes. And at 3 minutes in, I had nothing left to talk to him about. He was the most boring man I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, how am I going to fill time with this guy? I got a call, and I had said, caller, you're on the air. And the caller goes, yes, I have a question for him. And he said, when you were in China, did you ever have the dish come of some young guy? And do you remember that, Jim?
Yeah.
And I didn't think I heard it. You know how you think you heard it? We didn't have 7-second delay. And I'm like, well, no, he didn't say that. And then I, like an idiot, I say, can you repeat the question? And he repeats it again. And the guy thinks about it a moment and he goes, no, I don't believe I have. And everybody in the control room, I could hear them laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
I mean,
Through the soundproof walls, you could hear them laughing.
Yeah, I could hear them laughing.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that talk show because I was searching the internet and YouTube for any kind of video I could find aside from the stuff that I have, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, Sue. But I came across this thing called the Lynn Bailey Show.
Oh, God.
Lynn Bailey.
Time now for The Lynn Bailey Show, a weekly feature of Cablevision Channel 9. Lynn has some suggestions on places to go, things to do, and even a guest or two. And now, here's Naples' gal about town, Lynn Bailey.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting us into your homes. We're delighted to be there, and we have a really interesting guest today. His name is Steve Brockelman.
Yeah.
Well, it was from 1977, and it was posted by a friend of Malin Moore. Malin Moore was the program director
Oh,
of
yeah.
CVU and the voice, this is WCVU, there was all elevator music. This guy was a friend of Malin's who had worked on some TV shows, and he did some acting, and he was visiting Malin in Florida. So I guess they were scratching for guests, and he convinced Lynn Bailey to bring him and Malin on for this show. And it's on YouTube, Sue. You got to watch it, Jim, you too, because it's disturbing. It's disturbing in the effect of, I think I saw a headline on another website that took me to that link, that Malin described Naples in the late 70s as just like a huge, big Valium.
Christiana Optical is owned by Richard Dick Gorkas, and he's been a registered optician for many, many years now. And his son Rick is there in training to become an optician, and his sister Irma, Dick's sister Irma, is the receptionist there, and she certainly will welcome you. They're closed daily from 12 noon until 2, gives them time to have lunch and to make a few phone calls and tie up a few loose ends.
And you watch this show, and it's like, her eyes are glazed, and it's all like that Stepford Wives stuff. And, she goes, and I forget what the guy's name was. Did I write it down? Stephen Brockelman.
Oh, yeah.
And she goes, "So are you married?"
You're too young to pick up a wife along the way.
No wife.
No wife, so it's easy to go. Have suitcase, car, will travel.
That's it.
You know, I mean, it's still the late 70s. It was before, you know, being out and open was, you know, coming across the radar, and people felt comfortable doing that. I remember Malin taking me aside, and I still wasn't sure myself, or I was half in the closet at the time. But, you know, you don't bring that up at interviews. You know, do you have a wife? Nope, I'm single. You don't say, "Oh, I'm gay." You know, at that time, you just didn't do that, because that'd be, you know, okay, thank you. We'll look at your tape. But I remember, and then never call you back.
Yeah.
But I remember Malin coming up to me, and, you know, after meeting me for a while, you know, we never hung out and partied or anything. But I remember him coming up to me because my cubicle was right in the newsroom, right off the big WCVU easy listening hubs. And he came up to me, and he leans on the desk, and he goes, "You know, RJ, it's okay to be gay." And I was like, "Wow, okay, take it under advisement." But that, you know, that's as far as it went. But what can you tell me about the Lynn Bailey show?
Lynn was priceless. She really was. And you'd have to really listen to her because she had a very attentive audience. People would tune in. She'd tell them she went shopping at Lilly Pulitzer or whatever. And I bought these bracelets. She says they're just fabulous, darling. You have to go see them down there. People liked listening to her.
She was very popular.
You were an anchor, but did you also do any reporting in the time that I was there? Because that's all my reference is of news.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we had to produce 2 stories a day.
They should have it. We have it in New York. And it saved a lot of lives. It has.
I notice you're not wearing one.
Just because I just got out of the beach. That's why.
That's right.
In addition to producing the news and putting the show together and then anchoring, sometimes we'd get leads. Sometimes we'd have to come up with something.
Well, I enjoyed doing feature stories.
Yeah.
Well, let's face it, Mondays can be a drag, especially if you have to work. Mondays like today, R.J. Heim feels like hanging around, as we see in this report.
When the South Florida sunshine is bright and warm, many people are driven to the beach, and they just hang around. But who are they hanging around with, and why?
My wife.
Why?
Because she's fun to be with.
Those two. Get along with them pretty well.
I just want to let around you.
Those people out there.
So the next time you're just hanging around, why don't you look around to see who might be hanging around looking for you? R.J. Heim, NEWSWATCH9 at the Naples Pier.
I do like the pants. This has been NEWSWATCH 9 for this evening. For R.J. and Joe, I'm Susan Gardner. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
One of the first ones I did was on the swamp buggy races. I got the package and got the sound bites. I think I shot it with Jerry Pugh, put it on the news. And I remember you, Sue, saying, "RJ, you got to send that to CNN." I was like, "What? How does that work?" And back in the day, we didn't have any uplink capability. We only had download capability. So you said, "Here's the address." You make a dub of it and you put it in the mail and, you know, wait a couple days. And they called back and they said, "We love this. Can you do more stories like this? We want to buy this one from you." I think I made $150 or something. I gave the photographer some money too. The next week, Lynn Russell on the brand new CNN Headline News is kicking every other hour of CNN Headline News, and R.J. Heim reports.
You race it in a figure 8, and then you get very wet because the race is in a swamp. R.J. Heim has more.
Just another spectator sport. If you're tired of layups, home runs, and touchdowns, this may be the diversion you've been waiting for. It's called swamp buggy racing. The vehicles are swamp buggies, somewhere between stock cars and speedboats. They race in qualifying heats around a figure 8 track in the swamp. And the crowds in the grandstand love it.
I just love to see them get wet out there and have fun. Not even the mud holes back home can compete with these.
It's kind of unique. They go underwater and all that stuff. You know, it's not something that you can go to a racetrack and see every day.
A lot of racing to go.
They go around the track real fast and get stuck.
They love the atmosphere. They love the food. They love the cotton candy. They love the hats. They love the Swamp Buggy Queen. What is your role as Swamp Buggy Queen?
I just appear at the races and meet the people, and I get thrown in the mud at the end of the races.
You get thrown in the mud at the end of the races? Why do they do that? You're so pretty.
I don't know, it's tradition. I think they should change it, but I don't have anything to say about it. It's not that bad. I can always go home, take a bath afterwards.
Come on, the excitement, the fun, they have nothing like this anywhere. We go to Daytona, and this is entirely different.
A sport born out of the tropical environment. Swamp Buggy Racing, Southwest Florida style. R.J. Heim for CNN, Collier County, Florida.
It was going around the world, and I was like, oh, shit. That was a bit of encouragement that, you know, putting all this stuff together could work. Some of the other features, Christmas trees in Florida, the sidewalks end in some neighborhoods. People didn't have basements, so I'd knock on people's doors and they'd say, could you show me your basement?
Well, we're doing an informal survey, and we'd like to know, can we see your basement, please?
No basements around here.
It's like, we don't have any basement.
I remember the one you did when you attached the string to the $10 bill.
Right, and
they were trying to grab it, and you were in the production truck and pulling it away from them.
It was an April Fool's Day joke.
Yeah.
It has its origins that date back to an ancient Hindu festival called the Holi, where unsuspecting persons have been preyed upon.
This is the Palmer Cablevision parking lot. In this truck, a hidden camera. In this production van, yours truly, with a $20 bill attached to fishing line. The object, to play an April Fool on passersby looking for quick cash. This gentleman was too embarrassed to talk about the foolishness. Oops, the wind sure is funny down here. Alan, do you feel a little foolish now?
No, not really. Nobody, it'd be foolish walk by a $20 bill.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Maybe if I step on it. I won't hurry. It's not going too far. Do you know what today is?
April Fool's Day.
Did anyone else get you today?
No, not like this. Not on TV.
Well, we just had to do it, and you don't feel foolish at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Is this going to be on TV really?
Yeah.
Tonight?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
On the reel that you sent me, Jim, you've got some great stuff on there.
Oh, the Great Dock Canoe Race.
Yes, the Great Dock Canoe Race.
Yeah.
Quite a production, Jim.
Yeah, we did that every year with Joe Klimas.
What are you here to represent?
We're here to set history today. We want to actually put our name in history in terms of being able to canoe.
You look as though you work a little bit at the body exchange. How's the bodies today?
Excellent. Here we go. Show them, Joe. Show them what you got going. Here we go.
And people that aren't familiar with the Great Dock Canoe Race, people from town and sponsors would go into this Gordon River and paddle around Bowie and then come back. But little did we know how polluted the Gordon River was at that time.
Yeah.
You know, it was. And we were falling in and swallowing the water. And it really was heavily polluted. And we didn't even know about it then.
Yeah. It was kind of an end of season celebration where once all the snowbirds left, it was a time for all the restaurant people to get together and have a big party.
Yeah. I mean, I remember falling in there, getting all wet, swallowing the water. I mean, like, God, how are we still alive, you know?
Jim, you're starting to scratch just thinking about it, like an old So the writing was on the wall with NEWSWATCH9. They at least gave us the opportunity to say goodbye, which doesn't often happen. You know, sometimes you do a newscast on Friday and then, you know, you come in Monday and they're like, that was the last show. In anticipation of that, I went through and made these feature composites that kicked the end of every the last Monday night show, the last Tuesday night show, the last Wednesday, the last Thursday, and then the last Friday night show, where I weaved some music and just did little sound bites from each one of the features.
The fun part of living to me is to do something for somebody else and to make their life better because you've been there.
It's kind of weaving the tale.
How many takes did it take to...
I believe it was 9 takes. 9 takes. That was today.
It was 9 takes before we got this lead down pat.
It happens when you're strolling along and... Where did the sidewalk go?
Well, I just programmed the computer to write Channel 9 is great.
And looking at it in a second head perspective, it was almost like an editorial commentary on what they're killing here.
The machines are good, but without good labor, you just can't get the car clean. The machines can only do so much.
You know, there was a soundbite that I had done on a feature package about these troubled kids who were in a group home. And they all got, you know, signed releases, and the head of it invited me out to go talk to them about it. He's saying stuff like, anyone can leave here anytime they want to, but none of them want to. You know, so I'd like, okay, that's a good bite.
To learn, to grow, to support each other, and to move on in spite of those difficulties.
Weave these stories of the goodbye to NEWSWATCH9.
To work and to live in freedom and, you know, have friends and be in the best of health in a free country.
RJ Heim, NEWSWATCH9 in Goodland.
It was kind of sad. I mean, they're all on my YouTube page to watch again, but it broke my heart that they killed the thing. How did you feel about the end of it, Sue? Take it or leave it?
No, I think the time had come. It ran its course. And by not having that hometown feel, which is what I think people liked about it, I think the core was missing when we all left. They can't capture that again. What do they say? You can never go back home again? Well, I don't think you could after that time. We had a really good run, and I'm happy for everything we did. I'm very proud of everything we did. We had a great time. I met some of the greatest people I've ever known. And I think you can't ask for anything more than that.
We're still friends 40 some odd years later, Sue.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Well,
you know, I tell people that I've never had an experience like that. I mean, I've been working in broadcasting and TV production for over 40 years now, but that original job at Palmer was just something very special. I mean, the people, and like Sue said, it just had a kind of a nice hometown feel of family. And, you know, we knew we weren't necessarily lighting the world on fire, but we were really, you know, putting out a good product, a quality product, and informing the, you know, people of Collier County of what's going on. And I think people responded to that. I mean, when I first started there, you know, and I was living in a little beach shack, you know, a few blocks from the beach, and I could ride my bike to work and ride home and ride my bike down to the dock at the end of the shift and have some beers with everybody. But I could literally ride my bike down Main Street or Fifth Avenue South at about 6 o'clock, right down the middle of the street, and it was dead because they would literally roll up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock downtown Naples. And it was just empty. And it really had a unique small town feel.
Know you, Naples. You're good people, you're friendly people, hard-working people, oh Naples. We know you, Naples. You're pretty places with smiling faces and more than a trace of Naples pride. Let it shine, let it shine. We know you, Naples. We like what you do. You like us, Naples, 'cause we're Naples through and through. Get to
that I think once we got into the 90s and people really started discovering Naples and, the mass migration down to Collier County, really changed the chemistry of the town and the feel of the town. And like Sue said, you can't really recapture that. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and it's not going to be the same again.
We had great creative freedom there.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, the stuff we got away with.
Caddy, my lucky ball. It always goes where I want it.
Wow!
Don't lose that ball!
It looks like it's headed toward the caddy shack. Wow, what a slice, sir.
Yeah, right where I wanted it.
Caddy Shack, the place for ribs, edibles, and elixirs. Open for lunch and dinner.
There's no way I could do those things today. Or some of the IDs we would make, we would just goofy stuff and put it on the air. I remember one time, one of my creative collaborators, Bev Anderson, and later Bev Moranto, she married our engineer, Bill Moranto. She and I had a great creative connection, and we'd go out and do stuff, and sometimes at lunch we might have a couple of beers and maybe smoke a little something, and then we put together these absolutely bizarro commercials, and we'd show them to the clients, and they're kind of like, "Well, I guess so."
G93 means music and money. You can win $93 in music money today if you're the 15th caller after hearing the 2 jackpot songs played in a row.
I remember showing it to the marketing director of the radio station. She was kind of dumbstruck. She's looking at this like, what is it? I don't know. Then we talked her into it. Said, "Oh, this will be great. Put it on the air. You'll love it."
And it worked. And it worked.
It ended up winning an Addy Award. We put it together, stoned out of our brains in about 2 hours on an afternoon. And it turned out to be one of my favorite commercials I ever did, I think.
It was like we were creative rebels in quiet little sleepy Naples.
Yeah. Nobody ever said, "Hey, you can't do that."
Susan, if you don't want me to keep this in, I won't. But do you recall a time when you had referenced Joe Klimas really getting tanked before every sportscast? And you were like, "Jesus Christ, Arch," off the air. You took me, "Jesus Christ. You see how drunk he was?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Tell you what, tomorrow, meet me out in the parking lot right outside the studio just before airtime." And I was like, "Okay." Do you remember this, Sue?
Vaguely.
So, of course, being the dutiful, young, wild guy with this wild bunch of other people doing this wild little thing on Palmer Cablevision, I met Sue out in the parking lot. She opens up her purse and she pulls out this sticky little quarter of a joint or half a joint that was left. And she goes, "Here, you took a hit." I took a hit. And, the stuff wasn't really strong back then, but I think you got the really good stuff because, within 2 puffs, we were like, "Oh God, we got to go on the air now." And we did. And, we were laughing and our eyes were like this. And it was we had a great time. It was a little scary. But the next day, one of the gals in the sales department comes up to us. She sees us in the hallway. She goes, "Were you guys high on TV last night?" I was like, "No, what are you talking about? What?" But the idea that you had to do that was to show Joe, because then Joe asked us after the show was over. He goes, "Were you guys high?" What does it matter? You're drunk. I don't know, but I never did that again because I felt in the rest of my career a responsibility when you're on the air, you owe it to the viewers who are tuning in to see you to give them the clearest possible, thing to watch that they could, and I never did it again after that. Any take on that, Sue?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Plead the
I'll
fifth.
just let it go at that, okay?
Okay, all right. No denial, no
I'm not
affirmation or
gonna,
denial.
no.
Let me fast forward here then. NEWSWATCH9 is over. I had part-time in Miami on the weekends.
We're going to get some sunshine. High temps are around South Florida. Everybody was in the 80s today. We're going to be pushing 90 tomorrow.
And Homer felt bad. They were going to be killing the newscast. And I remember Homer bringing me into his office and he says, well, so, you got that job in Miami. Aren't they going to take you full time? And I said, well, I had a deal with them. And 11 months into that deal, that guy got fired. And the new guy asked me for my contract. They didn't have one. He told me to get out of his office. So I was part-time in Miami. And so I'm holding on here until maybe something will happen over there. And he seemed kind of like, so they found a job for me on the engineering staff. And that was to go out with one of the other engineers and you're going to do the Collier County Commission meeting. And they showed me how to pull the camera out of the closet at the commission chambers and hook it up. And they said, just lock it down and let it go, and just keep it on this one wide shot. But, I'm a creative guy. Okay. Oh, and I was bored to tears, after I did one of them where it was just locked down and I'm like, so
I did plenty of those myself.
So the second time I was like, all right, let me have a little fun with this. So, I had the establishing shot for the first, the roll call in the first minute or two, but then I started zooming in on each one of them, whether they were talking or not. A close up. And don't you know, one of the commissioners, when I pan over to him, he's like, I thought that was the best goddamn thing in the world. So I left it up. Because Palmer Cablevision, part of the deal was for them to do county commission meetings. The two-way street. You had to do them. Well, the ruckus that created. I mean, it was honest. It showed them for who they really were without even putting a commentary or opinion on the bottom. Another one picking his nose, I think. Someone rolling their eyes. And another commissioner didn't like what the other one was saying, and then like talking to the other one, like I got called into Homer's office and he was like, all right, that's it. Opens up his drawer, pulls out the checkbook, and he wrote me 5 checks for 5 weeks of severance. And he goes, I hope you learned a lot here.
Now get the hell out of here.
Now get out.
Oh my God. That is too funny.
Now, Jim, you threw some good parties too.
Yeah. We always had fun over there at 412 10th Avenue South.
Now, I was at 8th Avenue South in a shack in the guest house behind the main house.
Like a real savage.
The studios were at 333 8th Street South, so right at the next corner heading up towards you used to live, Sue, that next street, and it went down towards the Gulf of Mexico. Second job in TV, I'm living in Naples, Florida, in a guest house blocks from the beach, and we had some good parties at your place, too.
Oh, God.
Are those dates all over?
Who remembers?
I can't remember many of them.
Well, anything else you guys want to add? This is why I think these are important stories to tell. They're just so much fun.
But I still look back fondly on the days at Palmer as some of the best days I ever spent doing this job. A lot of great memories. Couldn't think of a better place to cut my teeth in.
When Sue and I have kept in touch over the decades, sometimes we'd miss a couple years in between. But Sue had called me up. She goes, "Hey, Arj, do you have any tape of me on NEWSWATCH9? I'd like to take a look at some of that." And I had like a composite reel of most of my stuff, right? Because I was using it to get another job in television, not necessarily of Susan Gardner. So, made a dub of it on VHS, sent it down. A couple days later, you called me back. What did you say, Sue?
I don't know if I can repeat that, can I?
Yes, you can. It's the internet.
It's all about you, RJ. There's only 5 seconds of me, and the rest is all you. Okay? There's none of me on there except maybe a 5-second thing, and that's it. Thank you, Arj. It's all about you.
But I tried to explain to her I didn't want to use any of that valuable tape.
Oh, on
And-
me. Yeah.
Well, because I was going for a job at another TV station, not you.
Oh, well, you could have thrown me in. We could have gone as a pair.
There, if you look close at that tape, there's some nice crosstalks, some really good crosstalks that we had, Sue.
Yeah.
You're on there. Just not in.
Yeah, but it's your face and my voice.
No, your face is on there. Too.
No, I don't think so.
See, Joe? See? Sue, you didn't do any more broadcasting after that was over?
No, because I got pregnant and I had Aaron, and then I got pregnant with Evan, and then Jim Keating offered me a radio show in the mornings from 9 till 10. Well, when the kids were small, and I did that. And then I slowly got into interior design. So they featured my home in the newspaper one weekend, and I got a bunch of calls of people asking me to help them with their interiors, and I transitioned into that, and here I am,
Do you ever miss it?
Oh, God, yeah. How could I not? I mean, I think the times are different now.
I think you need a video talk show. So
You think so?
Oh my God, Jim, what do you think?
I think she needs her own YouTube channel. Sue's interior decorating tips.
I can talk, that's for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why I wanted you on Up and Down the Broadcast Trail, Season 1, Episode 2.
Well, maybe it'll be 2 and 3 out of this.
There was one other time I'm one of the engineers, like shooting the county commission meetings, and I was like, this isn't for me. While I'm driving across the Everglades and doing Saturday and Sunday at Channel 6 in Miami. At one point, someone called me. I've got my home phone number from WeView, and they said, RJ, they're short a weather person up there. Can you come up and fill in? And I was like, sure, and a network station, right? Instead of a cable outfit. So I went up there, and the main weather guy at the time, he's showing me how it all works. And I didn't have a degree in meteorology at the time. I thought I had a basic working knowledge of weather, high pressure, low pressure, cold fronts, and warm fronts. And I learned later on, after getting my seal of approval from the American Meteorological Society, going to school nights and weekends, that it's more than that. And he's trying to show me, how all that was working, he'd show me how the equipment worked. And then, the next night I was going to do it myself. And I'm in there, and it wasn't in the newsroom. All the computer equipment was on the set, in this freezing cold set with the lights out, and you could just turn on like a desk lamp. And I'm trying to figure this thing out and make it work. And everyone else was in the newsroom. And at one point, all the lights went out, and I thought, oh, maybe the bulb burned out in the studio here. So I'm like, Helen Keller walking through trying to, no emergency lights came on or anything. I went out into the lobby, which was right off the studio, and I heard everyone saying, oh, what the hell, man? What was that? Oh, the whole building's out of power. There was like some thunderstorm, or, some power failure, and the generator didn't kick on, or the generator needed maintenance and it wasn't working anymore. So it's starting to get stuffy in there, and you couldn't see anything. There was no windows even in that lobby. You couldn't see anything. So it's like, oh, who's that? And who's that? And you're talking to somebody next to you, and someone's like, oh, is that you, RJ? And I'm like, yeah. They say, well, so really, what do you think about WeView? What do you think about working here? And, I was in my 20s, and I kind of spoke my mind. I said, well, if this is the kind of shit we're all going to have to put up with, maybe not. Just then, all the lights came back on, and standing one person beside the next person who asked me that was the station manager. And he goes, what's your name? That was my first and last time on WeView. Homer gave me my 5 checks, and all I had was part-time on the weekends. And I was out on one of the beaches in Miami Beach in between shows. And I ran into another weatherman in Miami. And I told him my story, and he says, well, you need to get the hell out of Naples. He goes, I have a guest room in the back, and why don't you just put all your stuff in storage and come here and so you can land on your feet. And I was like, that's really nice of him. So that's how I left. And then I worked my way digging through old radio tapes and got a job at 97 A1A, and then Easy 102 and then WLYF. I said goodbye to Naples and never looked back until now. I miss you guys.
Yeah, miss you too.
Those were good times.
And it blew her house, and it landed in Munchkinville.
Got their picture taken. Time. To some, there's never enough of it. To others, it doesn't go by quick enough. It was my turn. A race against weatherman Jim Farrell from TV 20. That's right. Do you always look both ways when you...
Yes.
A lot of time, effort, and energy went into making that show not just a good one, but an outstanding one.
Any kid can take off from here whenever they darn well please to, but none of them want to. Oh man, we've been having a great time today. Look at the crowd here.
It took a lot of time to make it.
All you have to do is dance the best buzzard low.
All right. Until next time, up and down the broadcast trail. Thanks, guys.
Oh,
Thanks,
anytime.
RJ. This is fun.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch.
All right.
All right, buddy.
Up and down the broadcast trail. TV through the tunnel of time.
There'll be more stories to come featured on TV through the tunnel of time.com. Be sure and click the subscribe button right here as I invite you to Miami, Florida for the next stop up and down the broadcast trail at WCIX Channel 6.
TV through the tunnel of time.
Sponsored by Data Appraisals of Florida, Motif Magazine, 24-Hour Burn, the Providence Eye, and the Refugee Dream Center of Providence. Also, be sure to check out the music companion, musicthroughthetunnelofTime.com.
Music through the tunnel of time.
For all genres and all eras of contemporary music. Screenshot it or scan it now and share it with your friends and followers. Download the app by searching MTTTOT.
Search MTTTOT. MTTTOT.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe, share it with your friends, and thank you. I'm RJ Heim. Catch you next time.
Up and down the broadcast trail. TV through the tunnel of time.